In 2010, the Labour government intervened through HMRC to shut down an Isle of Man scheme used to import yachts into the European Union and thus avoid tax. A similar scheme has recently been exposed relating to the import of business jets into the Isle of Man. So can the Prime Minister assure the House that HMRC investigates these new allegations diligently?
The right honourable gentleman has made a number of references in his question, and I will address all of them. On the first point, it is absolutely essential, and he is right, that we have processes, that political parties have processes to deal with allegations of misconduct. Also, that obviously we have the Ministerial Code and proper investigations take place against the Ministerial Code where that is appropriate. But I believe it is also crucial for everybody working in this Parliament, be they working for a Member of Parliament, for the House authorities or a journalist working in this Parliament, that there are proper processes in this Parliament for people to be able to report misconduct and for that to be dealt with. And I think that is very important, and I'm grateful to him for saying that he will meet with me, and I hope other party political leaders. I see the leader of the SNP is nodding his head at this point, to look at this particular issue. Can I also join him in paying tribute to both Frank Doran and Candy Atherton? Frank Doran was first elected in 1987. He served 2 separate terms as the MP for Aberdeen, chaired the Administration Committee for 5 years, was a tireless campaigner for safety in the oil and gas industry, and I'm sure everybody will recall the commitment with which he served in this House and join me in offering condolences to his family and friends. And Candy Atherton, of course, was first elected in 1997 when I was first elected. She served for 8 years as a Member of Parliament, but she was a strong campaigner for women's rights and disability issues and continued to champion those causes on Cornwall Council after she had left this House. And once again, I'm sure members across the House will join me in offering my condolences to her family and friends. The right honourable gentleman talks then about tax avoidance. I can assure him that where cases are referred to HMRC in relation to tax avoidance, they do take those seriously, they do look into those measures seriously. We have taken action collectively as a government over the last few years, since 2010 when we first came in, and we've secured almost £160 billion in additional compliance revenues since 2010 through a number of measures that we have taken to ensure that we clamp down on tax evasion and avoidance.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, 957 business jets in the Isle of Man seems a bit excessive for any island anywhere, and I hope it's investigated and due tax is collected from those people that are trying to avoid it. Because estimates of the scale of tax dodging range from 34 billion, which is around the size of our school's budget, to 119 billion, which is the size of the NHS budget. The Isle of Man VAT avoidance allegations are part of a wider leak from the Bermuda-based law firm said to be on a similar scale to the Panama Papers. Will the Prime Minister commit the HMRC to fully investigate all evidence of UK tax avoidance and evasion from this leak and prosecute where feasible?
I had given the right honourable gentleman an assurance in my first answer that HMRC does take these issues very seriously, does investigate and does take action, and where appropriate, tax loopholes are closed. What is important is that if we look at the record that we have, we see, I mentioned the £160 billion in additional compliance revenues since 2010. We've announced or implemented over 75 measures since 2010 to tackle tax avoidance and evasion. The right honourable gentleman referred to one that had been done by the Labour government. We have been continuing to act on this particular issue, so we will be raising billions of pounds more as a result of that. But I reassure him, I think most people would recognise that HMRC actually does rather want to collect tax. That's its job, and it does look to make sure it can do so as much as possible.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's rather strange then that Britain reportedly has blocked a French-led proposal which would have placed Bermuda on the European Union tax haven blacklist. Perhaps the Prime Minister could explain why that would be the case. The Panama Papers exposed many wealthy individuals and big businesses who avoided tax through offshore trusts. Labour backs any necessary changes to toughen our laws against aggressive tax avoidance. And just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we tried to strengthen legislation on beneficial ownership of trusts with amendments we placed to the Finance Bill. Why did the government vote against them?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that he raises the issue of the British overseas territories. In fact, this government has taken action in relation to those British overseas territories, action that was not taken by the previous Labour government. So this is, if he says to me that this whole question of tax evasion is something that needs to be constantly looked at and government needs to be prepared to act, then my answer is yes, we are and we will.